Hello and welcome at Book Lovers Companion. My name is Edith, and here in Vienna we are way up in the 30s degrees Celsius at the moment. It's hot in the city, and it's supposedly to get hotter and maybe also thunderstormy. The teacup sends her regards. She's taking care of our dear CEO and his PAs, but I'm lucky to have a wonderful guest with me, the lovely Sara Johnson from across the pond. Hello, Sara, and welcome at Book Lovers Companion. It's a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here.
Wonderful. So I have read your book, the latest one, book number 5 in your series. Is that correct? Book number 5, The Hungry Bones.
It's the 5th in the Alexa Block Forensic Mysteries, yeah.
Oh, okay. A book that is set not in the United States, it is set in New Zealand. We will come to that a bit later. But Sara, what can you tell our listeners about book number 5, The Hungry Bones?
Book number 5 is amazing. It is, by the way, Edith, the first book where my publisher kept my working title, The Hungry Bones. All the other books I've written, they've changed my title, so I'm thrilled that they kept it. And when you read the book, you'll know that it's the perfect title for this. The book touches upon gold mining in New Zealand. And after the European gold miners got all the gold from the area, Arrowtown, they invited Chinese miners to come and get what they thought was going to be the dregs. The Chinese miners never wanted to settle in New Zealand. They wanted to make their money and go back home. But of course, many of them were unable to ever get back home. And those are the hungry ghosts. There's the Chinese belief that you need to be buried in your hometown where you were born, and the ones that aren't kind of haunt the grave until they can get back home.
And your main character, Alexa, she's not a Kiwi. She's from the United States. So why the New Zealand setting then?
Yes. By the way, about Alexa Glock not being a Kiwi, it was maybe some of the best advice I got when I was trying to find an agent is, why did you make her a Kiwi? Why not an American? So I went back and rewrote the book, having Alexa be the fish out of water in New Zealand. She is an American. But my husband and I were fortunate enough to spend 9 months in New Zealand, and that's why the books are sent there. When we first arrived, there was this tremendous storm. It was September, and we had no idea. Was this normal New Zealand weather, or was it something otherworldly? And it was just a terrible storm. And the second day of our stay, I read the newspaper headlines, and it said, chances of finding tourists alive very remote. And over the next week, this horrible story emerged in the newspaper about this Canadian couple who were traveling during that horrible storm in a camper van, which is a real popular way that people explore New Zealand, and they disappeared. And their van, the chassis of the van, was found 80 meters below in a river gorge, just draped over a boulder. Her body was found a week later, and his femur was found 3 years later. And so it just planted a seed in me that people can up and disappear in New Zealand. So each one of my books is very setting based. I come up with the setting first, and then I come up with the plot. And there are just so many different ways to disappear in New Zealand. It is such a beautiful, remote, unspoiled country, and it's just a perfect place to set my book. So Alexa is a traveling forensic investigator, and most of the little towns in New Zealand, they're just too small. They maybe have one police officer. And so, of course, they don't have a forensics office there. So Alexa travels, which is a perfect thing for my books because I can have her travel from one remote place to another as crimes take place. So she is a traveling forensic investigator. She's very geeky. She's better with postmortems than she is with men. And teeth are her specialty. She's an odontologist and she believes teeth may lie. Lips may lie, but teeth never do. And teeth really factor in each one of the books in amazing ways. I mean, where did you live, Edith, when you were 7 years old?
Lower Austria.
There you go. The strontium isotopes in your molar could tell somebody where you were when they erupted in your gums. And that is what Alexa uses in this book to find out where a skeleton is from. And it's just the most fascinating forensics. Teeth are just amazing.
Are teeth, I mean, it is also mentioned in the book that teeth are the last thing that, or that's the part of the body or the skeleton that remains the longest. So
that's right.
Is it possible then to extract a DNA from teeth as well?
Yes.
The longest?
Yes, in very high heat, DNA might be degraded, but in this case, there hasn't been any heat when Alexa is called to Arrowtown, New Zealand, and so she will extract DNA from the molars, but sometimes in high heat, the DNA can be degraded, and that happens in book 6, by the way.
Okay. And you already mentioned a little bit about the specific setting in this book number 5, about Arrowtown, about the gold mining. How much research was necessary for this part of the book to get it completely right?
I just take a deep dive into the research. You would not believe the beautiful stories I have found out from this research. It is just amazing. These Chinese miners, Alexa discovers during the book that the Chinese miners have these societies in which, like insurance, you could pay into. And if you died in New Zealand, they would gather up your bones that had already been buried and put them in ships and ship you back to southern China where you were from. That is how strong their belief was. And so Alexa touches upon this early in the book. She learns about these, they called them corpse ships. And so during my research, when I discovered that, I just thought that was amazing. I mean, that is a very strong belief, to dig up bones, clean them very tenderly and respectfully, and put them in little boxes and have these corpse ships. I did discover during my research that one of the corpse ships sunk with 500 skeletons aboard, sunk during a storm off the north coast of New Zealand. And I was able to visit that remote area a year ago and visit the memorial they have erected in honor of these Chinese miners. There were 499 of them aboard the ship, and each one of their names is engraved in this beautiful memorial. And of course, that didn't go in the book, but it's just amazing the places that research will take you. It's like the tip of the iceberg. You can put the tip in the book, but there's so much more I could say about that beautiful area and the stories behind it.
Yeah, absolutely. Falling down the rabbit hole is always a danger, isn't it, when you dive into research?
It's a wonderful thing that happens.
Yeah, absolutely.
Forensic experts help me with every one of my books because my background is as a educator, not in forensic science. So I have a forensic expert who reads over all my forensic scenes to make sure I get them right. I have a forensic pathologist in Christchurch, New Zealand. Oh, she's been such a big help. I mean, she'll just tell me simple things like, how do you flip a body? I'll get 2 pages on how you flip a body in a morgue, and it's just wonderful. And I wanted, in this book, I wanted a second, the more modern case murder in the book. I wanted the skull to have shown that somebody used a crowbar. And so I wrote this wonderful scene about how this uh, skull had what I thought were crowbar marks. But no, when the forensic pathologist read that, she said, really, your crowbar doesn't leave distinctive marks. I guess it shatters the skull too much. And she says,
Oh.
if you want distinctive marks, use a hammer.
Hmm.
And I'm not going to tell your readers whether I used a hammer or not.
No,
Kill
we
some.
do. Yeah. No. We do not want to give too much away. Interesting.
That's right. But that's
Yeah,
the kind of help we get.
I wouldn't have thought about that, but it's good to know. I mean, experts are usually happy to share their knowledge, aren't they?
They are. They want us writers to get it right. Just they don't want to see CSI scenes on TV where they got it all wrong, and they don't want us to get it wrong in our books. So I'm very appreciative of these people that read my work and help me. And of course, I always thank them in the acknowledgments. But
Yeah.
they're wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. And now you mentioned CSI. Somebody always wonders when you watch it or rewatch it, you think, what are they doing? Trampling on a murder scene without any protection, anything at all? Come on, people, that's not how it's done.
And have you noticed anytime there's an autopsy scene, the room is dark, except for of course it's not going to be dark.
Who's going to see anything? I mean, come on.
Right. It's pretty funny, but they do want us to get it right. Get it right. Another fascinating thing I touch upon in The Hungry Bones is faulty forensics. There are a lot of people in jail because of faulty forensics, or maybe we could say junk science. Like Alexa, even though she's an odontologist, she would never use bite marks as evidence because bite marks have been debunked, and it's just.
I mean, how was it even possible? Because you could change the way your teeth are ordered in your mouth. I mean,
that's right. That's right. So
I mean,
anyway,
not
that's
but how they are set. The setting of your teeth can be changed.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Totally.
Yeah. But
So,
I also found it interesting. This, like you mentioned now, this fingerprint. Everybody thinks fingerprints are 100% done, but not so much.
And I have learned that through my 5 books. Alexa has said in an earlier book, "Oh, it's a match." And I will never, I wish I could go back and take that out of an earlier book. So I'm learning more as I go through the series, but I would never use it to match again. I would say it's compatible. But the T fingerprints have sent a lot of people to jail.
Yeah, can imagine that. And also, what I liked in this book was this combination of the old and the current. So the past comes together with the present. And when you think of it, I'm not giving too much away, of course, to listeners. You have to read this book for yourself. But it's fascinating how long the past keeps haunting people.
That's right. That's right. The past is like a shadow that just follows us.
Yeah. And you mentioned before that it was important for the Chinese to bring back their dead. And it is also a vital part in the book that Alexa and her colleagues work on these remains to find out if there is a match with someone who is founding these excavations. Is or was that still a thing in the recent years or decades? Or was that mainly what you put in the book? Or did it happen?
Yes, I think that's what I put in the book. But remember, I mentioned that corpse ship that sunk off the coast of New Zealand. Of course, most of those remain still, and they just found that ship within the last, say, 8 years. And it has brought together Chinese descendants of the skeletons. And the Maori who live in that area, when those bones washed ashore, the Maori, it was such a remote area, there were no roads then. They're like, where did these bones come from? Where are these tiny coffins coming from? And they took those bones and they buried them in their own cemeteries and they tended them. And they knew that someday descendants would come and find and match. And when the boat was discovered, it brought together the Chinese descendants of the Hungry Ghosts and the local Maori. And it's just a beautiful story that gives me goosebumps.
Yeah, it's true.
And yeah, most of the bones are still there. Some were washed ashore, but they did a beautiful ceremony. I wish I could remember the name of the ceremony, but they did a beautiful ceremony that would put the Hungry Ghosts at rest.
Okay, understand. Now you mentioned the Maori, and the Maori heritage also is part of the book. It's always mentioned, different words and how people deal with it. And also the DI that works on this case, she's Maori. And I also always found it funny when Alexa was going through her dictionary in her mind. What is New Zealand slang and what has she learned? Oh, there's a new word I have to store in my head for coping and understanding those people. Was it a bit like that for you when you were there?
Oh, totally. I just did not know what a bicky was or what a suki bubba was or I was all confused. So that was a lot of fun. The one that keeps coming up over and over again is the Kiwis or the Maori will say, yeah, nah, or nah, yeah. And I'm like, what does that mean? And so that's one Alexa had to get used to. So yeah, nah means no. Nah, yeah means yes. And the Kiwis use it all the time. And it's very, very confusing, but not anymore.
Yeah, I can imagine. You've learned it. Yeah, you know what's going on. Absolutely.
And Alexa has learned it through the 5 books that some of the things are becoming less confusing to her.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I also liked the little reference you put in this book to My Life is Murder. Because Alexa Crow and Alexa, your Alexa, and I mean, the Amazon Alexa, okay, that was, okay, that was clear. But this one I especially like because we always try to get every season of My Life is Murder. And
good. I'm so glad that resonated with you.
Absolutely.
It was my mother who said back when the first book was published, I think it came out in 2019, and she was reading the manuscript and she said, Sarah, don't name your main character Alexa. And I said, why, Mom? And she said, well, there's that Amazon Alexa thing. And I'm like, oh, that won't be a big deal. So it's a huge deal. And when people listen to my books, they all have wonderful audibles. She does set off people's devices, but there's nothing I can do about that now.
Too late. Anyway, but like I said, I enjoyed the My Life is Murder reference.
Good.
Perfect.
Good.
Absolutely love that. Absolutely. And these Chinese miners, you mentioned them before and why it was so important for them. And what also, when you read through the book, and there is always interspersed between the present chapters of the book, there's always these letters from the one person or whose remains they want to find, how he experiences life in New Zealand, what it's like for him and his fellow Chinese. What can you tell us about that? What could you find out about their life in New Zealand?
Yes, unfortunately, they were marginalized. At first, the Chinese were invited by the New Zealand government to come because they didn't want their boomtown to go bust because the European miners had moved on. But once they saw that the Chinese were very hard workers and were still able to extract gold, resentment built. And of course, they were not allowed to, when you go to Arrowtown, it's such a picturesque, Edith. It's the most picturesque town. And there's these tiny miners' cottages along the main street that have been preserved. But of course, that's not where the Chinese lived. They lived outside of town on the banks of the creek, and they, lived in impoverished lives. Um, uh, there was a lot of newspaper articles written at the time that, we must yellow peril, we must get rid of the Chinese, and so life for them was very, very hard. Um, Definitely on the cusp of the society.
Mm, mm. There was a lot of racism towards the Chinese in these days. Yeah,
That's right.
yeah. But there was also, I think, it had to do probably also with this misunderstanding of the culture, because it was not a Christian culture, it was a different culture, the importance of the ancestors. I suppose it also played a major part in this.
Right. When Alexa first finds out about the societies that unearth the skeletons, some of them still with flesh on the bones. She tries to keep her face neutral, but the thought of digging up bodies really disturbs her. And this is true. This really happened. So you can imagine the townsfolk. This would be really strange to them and maybe appalling, and probably did not help relationships at the time.
Yeah, I can imagine that how they handled, so to speak, their fellow Chinese to bring them back to China and make sure they can settle in their home country,
That's
unlike
right.
unlike what the Christians would do.
That's right, that's right, and the
Yeah.
European settlers, they came to New Zealand to stay in New Zealand and to spend their money in New Zealand, and the Chinese did not want to do that. They were not gonna buy houses and settle there and basically contribute to the economy. They wanted to take their money and go home and help the economy back home and help their families back home.
Oh.
So it's a different mindset.
A bit like it is still like that today, isn't it? For the
It is.
Chinese.
It is. Yeah.
Especially if they, I don't know, um, for example, go to Africa and dig up the resources and need or use Chinese workforce, no African workforce, and they leave the country and go back to China and yeah.
It's like many of our immigrants here, legal or non-legal in the US, they want to make some money and they often want to send that money home to help their
Yeah.
family.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's certainly the same today.
Yeah, it's also here in Europe. Was make
Mm.
money, earn money, and support family at home. Yeah,
Right.
absolutely,
Right.
absolutely. And you already mentioned the experts whose brains you pick for the forensics. What about the experts whose brains you pick for the police procedure? Do you also have experts you can
I do
rely
not.
on in this regard?
I do not. I do not. I just make all that up myself. But I try to do very careful research. But no, I have not got a police officer that is my consultant.
Okay. I'm
Yeah.
asking because I suppose police procedure in New Zealand is different from police procedure in the United States.
Right, that's right. I do have a lawyer friend, and whenever I get anything, she's in my writing group. And by the way, my writing group is the number one thing that has helped me become a better writer is having this writing group. But if I have anything that is illegal, she'll let me know immediately. Like when Alexa maybe goes into a house without a warrant, Alexa can sometimes just act before she thinks. And my lawyer friend will say, "No, Sarah, she can't do that. She can't do that." And so I do have that kind of help. Um, and I try to get it right. I try to do very careful research.
Okay.
Um, yeah.
Do you also have beta readers from New Zealand?
I have had in the past, and my forensic pathologist reads over the book. The first two books, my uh, editor wanted me to have um, sensitivity readers in New Zealand. So I had Maori readers read the first two books. I haven't had that since the first two books. They caught a few mistakes I made in the first book. I had a woman do a funeral in a funeral haka, and they said no, there wouldn't be a woman. And I had a meal that wasn't right, and so they helped me with that. But they thought that everything I touched upon with the Maori was culturally appropriate and sensitive. So I was pleased with that.
Now you mentioned the haka. I have to ask, sorry about that, dear listener. I have to ask, and having spent 9 months in New Zealand, do you still watch American football, or have you moved towards rugby?
You know, my husband and I went to some rugby games while we were there, and we had no idea what was happening. But I did like when they would get in a scrum. There were some very handsome players, and it was fun to see them all scrum together.
Okay. But you no longer watch rugby?
No, we don't.
No. It's a shame, because I absolutely love it.
Yes. And apparently there are fewer injuries in rugby than there are with American football, even though it doesn't look like it would be that way. Statistically, it's a sport.
Yeah, they are far stricter in what is permitted than in American football. Yeah,
yes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yes.
Just had to ask. Sorry.
Yeah.
You mentioned it before very shortly about the writing group, which is immensely important for you as a writer. I suppose not just after you finished your work of labor, but also for before, during the writing process. What can you tell me about your writing process? I mean, the usual question would be, are you a planner? Are you a pantser? And you said you said before you had the setting and then everything else. Can you elaborate a little bit on the way you do it?
I think setting is an underutilized area. I mean, you can do so much with setting. Your setting can be symbolic. It can limit suspects. It can just do so much for a book. But I have tried it both ways, planning and pantser. I think with book 3, I had taken a master class with James Patterson, and he meticulously plans out each scene by scene by scene before he starts writing. And then he says when he starts writing, it's easy. So book 3, that's what I did. But as soon as I started writing, I went off-roading, and I left all that hard work behind. So I have a general idea and a general outline, but I really like I just like it when ideas come and they're really good. The ideas are better than anything I had planned. And I like to go with that. I'm under a contract, a book a year. And with book 5 was really hard to make that contract. I'm really getting better now. Book 6 was easier. I'm getting better at paying attention to my word count and really holding myself accountable. And planning. I think that's something that's really helped me is tracking my word count. Just because you've written 2 pages doesn't mean you've written many words. It could be all, a dialogue. So word counts really helped me make my contracts.
Okay. And did it also happen to you in your writing that a new character suddenly came out of nowhere?
Well, this is something that happened to me in book 6. I developed a crush on one of my characters. Now, don't tell my husband. And somebody said, "Oh, did you develop a crush on Bruce Horn, D.I. Bruce Horn, Alexa's on and off romantic interest?" And I'm like, "No, it was a ski bum." So that's something new that's happened. So you never know what's going to happen when you start writing your books.
Yeah, that's true. That's true indeed. And do you have a clear picture of your characters?
You know
what I mean is, do you see them? Do you see them in your head before you describe them and before you write them, or not at all? Do they have a face, so to speak?
I wish I was home. I'm not at home now, but I have a book, and what helps me is to find a picture of my characters. So I will
Mhm.
troll the internet and find somebody that I think looks like that character,
Hmm.
and then I will print out that picture of
Okay.
this unsuspecting person whom I have no idea anything about, and I will keep that person. And every time I get a thought, I'll jot it down next to the picture so that as I'm writing, I learn more and more about that person. That's how I have a picture, not in my
Yeah.
head, but a literal picture. And it really helps me,
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
helps me.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
So,
okay. And
yeah.
okay, the next question. I mean, it is. I have to ask that again. I am quite certain Alexa, your Alexa, doesn't look like Lucy Lawless, does she? No.
No, she doesn't. That's a question I get, who would play Alexa
Yeah.
in a TV series? And I don't have an answer for that. Whoever they want, they can
Yeah.
pick whoever they want.
Yeah. I mean,
But she does have wild hair. She does now
mm,
have to wear glasses. Um, and I can see her in my mind. But I try to do broad strokes because I want people to have their own picture of what she
mm,
looks like in their mind.
mm. Do you think that New Zealand as a setting is underrepresented?
I do. I do. I think New Zealand is on a lot of people's bucket lists. Is it on yours?
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Definitely.
Austria is on mine.
See? See? Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, it's such a beautiful country, and
Yeah.
the people are just so friendly. And the Maori culture is, I could go on and on about everything I've learned about the Maori culture. So I think it's a wonderful place to have a setting
Mhm,
for my book,
mhm.
and it is a way for me to keep being in New Zealand when I no longer am there,
Yeah.
by writing these books. We
Yeah.
did go back last year, so I'm happy to have been back once since I started the series.
Yeah, absolutely. We mentioned before the Maori detective. What about the Maoris in those high profile jobs?
Yeah. She, she really is based on the first female Maori detective on the South Island. So, and of course, that person, I printed out her picture and I tried to represent her as best I could um, through this character. And this character actually comes back in book 6 as well and is developed even further.
Mm.
Um, I really, really like that character.
Hmm. There is a lot of interesting, like you said, written novels. We had a New Zealand guest on the show before who writes thrillers, and we already mentioned TV shows and so on. We said it's underrepresented, and because it's such a small country, let's be honest.
Yes,
And what most people know is probably, like we said, rugby, the All Blacks, if at
right.
all. And it's a beautiful, yeah, Lord of the Rings.
That's right. Lord of the Rings. There you
But
go.
but otherwise, I mean, in crime literature, you have Neo March, one of the names in
That's right.
crime fiction for writing. She's from, or she was from New Zealand. She was female. So we have it all there. But why is it that it is so underrepresented? Is it because it's such a small country?
I think you've hit upon it. It is such a small country. They have a very viable crime community,
Yeah.
crime writer community in New Zealand, and they have the Nio Marsh Awards each
Yeah.
year. And oh my goodness, Michael Bennett has written a book, um, a mystery that he is a New Zealander,
Mhm.
and his book, Better the Blood. Oh, Edith, it was
Oh.
fantastic. So hopefully, sometimes in my newsletter, I interview New Zealand crime writers. I can't remember the other names. Michael Bennett, his book, Better the Blood, and he's written a second one since then. Oh, just a terrific, terrific book that will bring New Zealand more in the forefront. And his main character is a Maori police officer in Better the Blood. Oh, very good book.
Okay. Yeah, well, maybe they need a bit more of advertising, because when you look at another country, for example, Iceland, everyone knows Iceland, everyone knows the crime writing scene and the books, and it got such a huge boost.
Yeah.
But New Zealand flies a bit under the radar.
It does. Maybe they like it that way.
Maybe. Maybe. Good point. Good
Maybe
point.
like it that way.
Yeah, probably, because when you look at Iceland at the moment, there are so many tourists.
That's right. That's right. Yes.
It's unbearable.
So during the pandemic, my fourth book touches upon New Zealand as apocalypse insurance. A lot of the billionaire CEOs from California are buying up land in New Zealand, and they're considering it their plan B and building elaborate bunkers. And, the New Zealanders probably don't like this,
Understandable.
So, yeah. Yes.
Yeah. I can understand that, absolutely.
Right.
I mean,
right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And may I ask, Sarah, what brought you to crime fiction in particular?
All my life.
Just the thing you mentioned at the beginning, this what happened to the tourists, or even before that?
Oh, all my life I have been a huge fan of mystery, the mystery genre. I'm a wide reader, but I would say every other book I read is a mystery. And I'm like, Edith, I was 60 years old when my first book came out. So it's never too late. It is never too late to publish that book that you have always wanted to write. And mystery was what I wanted to write. And so I'm like, if I'm ever going to do it, I better do it. So,
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Fully agree. But as a mystery writer or a crime fiction writer, I always have to ask, because I wonder, are there things you would never put in one of your books?
Well, you never kill a dog.
Yes. Aside from that.
Yes. I will not go to torture or hurting children, things like that. I would just stay away from that.
No.
And I don't even really enjoy true crime podcasts. I do read true crime sometimes. I have no trouble killing fake people, but I tell you, when it's when it's real life, that's a whole different ball game there. That just horrible. Yeah.
But you do not describe the crimes in such a horrible way. You stay mostly away from the gory. And
crime has already happened. In my books, and I like to have a little fear. I like to have Alexa's put in danger at some point. I love that she uses her wits, and she is a very brave woman. She has faced sharks and Maori war clubs in my books, and she defends herself. She doesn't. She relies maybe on a can of soup instead of a gun. That happened in book 4. She really is a strong woman.
But there's something that's a bit for her, disturbing, let's say, that's nagging on her mind, is the fact that she doesn't have a PhD.
That's right.
So why not?
And she is not a dentist. Most odontologists are dentists, and she had a 2-year master's program all on teeth, and so that does kind of nag on her a bit. She may need to address one or the other in the future.
And she has a scientific crush.
She does. She does. And so do I. Let's see. I think it was my first book, I came across this scientist in Abertay, Scotland, who did this wonderful work on lifting fingerprints from bird feathers. And this is the same person that appears on the Zoom call in book 5. And Alexa's kind of had a crush on him ever since.
Ah, as the
Yeah.
scientific crush. Have
Yeah.
you now that you mentioned it, he's from Scotland? Have you listened to Dame Sue Black's lectures on the internet? She's a forensic anthropologist from Scotland.
No, I'm going to have to write that down and listen.
Yeah, she has also written 2 books about All That Remains is one of them, and another one, the title I can't remember now. And she had this fantastic Christmas lecture for students or school students about how experts, like your experts, go about a crime scene, what they do, how they do it, and so on. It was quite fascinating.
That will definitely, I will put that on my list to listen to. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's always fun. Listen to her. She also had her short. She had this TV show where they were looking at skeletons, for example, from, I don't know, the time of Oliver Cromwell and so on, depended on what could they find out about the skeletons, supposedly. What can we find out? It's quite interesting.
Right. Fascinating. It's just fascinating what we can find out.
Yeah, exactly. Modern science.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Sara, what would be your advice for any other author out there?
Get your butt in the seat. Don't fall prey to writer's block. Just start writing. And I think, like I said earlier, keeping a word count has really been helpful to me. And start with a low, say, I'm going to do 300 words today. And keep at it. Keep at it. So no excuses. Get your butt in the seat and track how much you're writing.
Okay.
And there's another good advice is pick a setting you're so excited about. If you're going to write a book, you want to be really excited about the setting. That's also some advice I have. I think about if I ever left Alexa behind, what other setting would really excite me and want me to write book after book about. So I think that's something that people need to really pay attention to, and also pay attention to your point of view. When I first started writing the Alexa Glock books, I picked close third-person point of view so that all the books are through Alexa's head only. And I try to make that entertaining for 320 pages, but sometimes I'm envious of other writers who have different points of view. You might have 4 different points of view in a book. So think about that before you jump in, like I did.
It's important. It's important because for the writer, it's absolutely clear who and what you are seeing or experiencing, but for the reader, sometimes not.
That's right. Yes, and have a writer's group. I have written scenes that I think are perfect, and I know they're perfect. And then I read it aloud to my writer's group. It's a group of 6 people, and they're like, "What in the world are you talking about? I can't see that in my head. Well, that doesn't make sense." And so another really good advice is read your work out loud, and then also read it out loud to other people. And so,
yeah, I absolutely know what you mean, because you as a writer know perfectly well what you're talking about, and everyone else is, huh? What?
Exactly. And I'm like, what's wrong with you? But of course, I keep that in my head and I listen. Be a listener. Be a listener too if you're in a writer's group, and try to be willing to learn from your other readers and writers.
Were you ever tempted to give first person a try?
No, I didn't. Like I said, when I first wrote the first book, I didn't think hard about point of view.
Mm,
And so for whatever reason, close third was the easiest for me, came the
mm,
most natural. So I never thought of doing first person. I think
mm,
that would be
mm.
really hard.
Yeah, you have to be aware that as a first person, there's a lot you don't know.
That's right. So much you don't know. And how can your main character get that information? And there's all sorts of ways, but
Yeah,
it's,
yeah,
it's
yeah, true. But do you enjoy reading first person?
oh, I do. I enjoy reading first person, third person, occasional second person. I just enjoy reading. I'm a
Yeah.
big reader. Yeah.
And for your next books and the future, do you plan on staying in for the books being contemporary? Uh, have you toyed with the idea of going historical completely?
What I'm toying with, yes, no, I like the present. What I am toying with is a new genre, women's fiction. So I have an idea for a book, and that will be really stepping out of my comfort zone and trying something new. But how else do we grow as writers if we don't
Exactly.
try something new? So not
Absolutely.
historical fiction, but women's fiction.
Yeah, well, that would be my next question. Plans for the future. What can you tell
Yeah.
us?
Well, book 6 is in the hands of my editor right now, and I
Oh,
will just say, think fire and think glaciers. Of course, we know the sad, sad thing is our glaciers are melting, and as our glaciers melt, bones, skeletons, mountaineers are becoming uncovered, and so that's where Alexa goes in book 6.
hmm.
Um, and then after that, I really want to try something new. And I have an idea for women's fiction from four different, no, excuse me, from from 3 points of view. A granddaughter, a mother who is maybe in her 50s, and an older, and her mother. So I'm very excited about that.
And where is this book set? Is it also set in
Well,
New Zealand?
no, it's not. I know it's not. And I thought I would set it at a retirement village, college town. Has to be a town with a university. And so I thought I would just set it in my area. But I don't know if I'm excited enough about my area. So I'm really going to have
Hmm.
to think about that. Setting may not be as important in this book as it is in my Alexa Block books, but I still want it to be a place that I get excited about. So I'm going
Hmm.
to have to put some more thought into that.
Oh, it's about generations and how
That's
they work out maybe conflicts.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. From, three different time periods. And I'm really excited about it.
Oh,
Yes. Yeah.
sounds like a lot of things get uncovered as well.
That's right, Edith. They will.
Okay.
Mhm.
I can imagine. It sounds like that. Surprises, surprises for the
Yeah,
next generations. Imagine that Granny had a life.
exactly. And still does.
Yeah. Who knows what's going on in those retirements,
That's
villages,
right.
murder and mayhem and everything else in between.
And maybe, so that's what's next for me.
Ah, maybe even Granny has a sex life. Oh God.
Oh, heavens.
Hmm.
And the 50-year-old daughter doesn't, and she doesn't like it. So, no, it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a lot of fun.
My mother has a sex life and I don't.
And I don't.
Yeah. Oh, goodness me. Absolutely. And Sarah, is there anything else you would like our listeners to know?
Just have fun reading the Alexa Glock forensic mysteries. A lot of people say, which book should I start with? And yes, you can start with the first one, which is Molten Mud Murder, but you do not have to. And I test this out on readers all the
Okay.
time. You can just pick up book 5, and you do not need to have read any of the other books to fully enjoy the journey.
Yeah, so it's a series, but sorry, every book is a standalone.
That's right. That's well put. Thank you.
Yeah, because you get all the information you need, because I have to admit I only read book 5.
That's right.
But you get all the information you need from the start, and even if you haven't read 1, 2, 3, and 4, you can enjoy that as well.
That's right. So I do want readers to know that.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I also want readers to know that when people read my books, they say, oh, they feel like they've been to New Zealand, that I really capture what it's like through the culture and the flora and the fauna. So enjoy taking a trip to New Zealand when you read my books.
It can be quite eerie, because there was only recently this crime fiction TV show, which is set in New Zealand. I can't remember the title. I've watched it, but I can't remember the title, with the police officer.
Where the police officer likes country music?
I don't know. She comes to the countryside, and I think her wife was an artist, and recaptures her artistic spirit again. And there is this shots of the landscape and the forest, and it's so eerie. And you think, oh goodness, I do not want to get lost there.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. You don't want to get lost in New Zealand.
And I think they also have more sheep than people also.
You know, unfortunately, I don't think that's true anymore, but it certainly used to be true. Yeah.
Yeah,
When
you don't
we
want
went
to
there
get
last
lost.
year, we noticed fewer sheep.
Okay. Yeah. And New Zealand is also prone to earthquakes, isn't it?
Oh yes. When my husband and I were there, we both said to each other around 2:00 in the afternoon, I had a dream about an earthquake last night. And my husband said, oh my gosh, I did too. And we read in the newspaper there had been an earthquake during the middle of the night, and the bed felt like it was on the waves out at sea. And we went to a little church once, and we were sitting there, and there was another earthquake, and we went to a lecture on earthquakes at Canterbury University. During the lecture, there was an earthquake.
See?
So it just happens. In book 3, The Bone Track, Alexa experiences an earthquake.
Yeah, it's quite frightening, isn't it?
Yeah, the shaky isles.
Yeah, well, when you go to Iceland, you have the volcanoes.
Right.
It flows. Right. The lava flows in front of your living room window. You can get rid, and you can go so easily rid of anybody there.
That's exactly right. Your mind works just like mine, Edith. In fact, the first book, Alexa, is a molten mud murder, and somebody does die in a thermal mud pit. And I thought I might be the first person to do that, but no, Nio Marsh did that in one of her books.
See? So, never to be found again.
That's right.
Perfect. Like I said, like in Iceland, just chuck them into the volcano and
exactly.
Don't know what happened.
Without a trace. Unless the teeth survive.
Damnation. Yeah. You have to think of everything. You have to, indeed. Absolutely. Right. Sara, anything else?
It's just been such a pleasure to be here, Edith. I really enjoyed your questions and your podcast. So just thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here, and thank you for making time. I will join you shortly in the green room, so don't go away, please. Dear listeners, we do hope you enjoyed this episode as much as my guest and I did. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. And I hope we'll meet again at Book Lovers Companion. Until next time.